Please be seated. Brothers and sisters, will you pray with me? Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. My first plague happened in the 3rd grade. As I walked to school, and as I daydreamed during math class, and as I played with my friends after school, there was always the same background noise. I constantly heard the sound of chainsaws blaring, of tree branches falling, and of trees being shredded. You see, in the 1960s, Dutch elm disease ravaged my hometown, Flint, Michigan, with a vengeance. Men in hard hats would come through the neighborhood and mark all the infected trees with big, giant orange X's. And then it was just a matter of time before they would come back with their trucks and their saws and their shredders. 2 trees would be in my backyard. One would be taken, and one would be left. Then 2 trees would be in my front yard. One would be taken, and one would be left. My mother wept bitterly the day they came for our trees. You see, Grandpa Sterner had planted those trees when he built our house in the 1930s. But my dad said those sick trees had to go. Otherwise, they would infect the healthy trees, and then all the trees would perish. That was my first plague. As a consequence of those big, giant orange X's, I don't much care for warnings. I didn't like them when I was a boy, when they were funny, like the warnings that robot gave the Robinson family on Lost in Space. Didn't like them. I didn't like them when they were serious as a heart attack, like the warnings on the side of my parents' cigarette packages. I didn't like them when they were a permanent reminder of how we live in fear, like the fallout shelter sign with the 3 black triangles that was posted at the entrance of my Presbyterian church. I guess I never much cared for warnings because I always took them seriously. So when Jesus tells me to be ready and to stay awake, just as I start the new church year, I have to take him seriously. I have to lift up my eyes on this first Sunday of Advent. I have to lift up my eyes with my entire church family. And on this Sunday, this World AIDS Day Sunday, I must not overlook those people who cannot lift up their eyes. This evening's gospel lesson from Matthew is not an easy one, folks. In fact, it's so hard that my homiletics professor, Barbara Lumlot, suggested that we preach on the Isaiah text that Brent so beautifully read for us. Thank you, Brent. And when I first read the Matthew passage, I thought it was the angry, haunted Jesus speaking to me. But the more I wrestled with the text, the more I realized that Jesus was coming from a profound place of unconditional love, a love that is almost too much for me to fathom. You see, he's speaking to his faithful followers in Jerusalem as his end draws near. And he's just told them, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Then he says what could easily be the title of tonight's lesson. But about that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. No one knows when Jesus will come again, Not Tim LaHaye of the popular Left Behind series. Not the psychics who predicted that the end would come with the war in Iraq. And apparently, not those who prophesied that it would come in May of 2012. No one knows the time. Not you, not me, not our board of stewards, not even Jesus. Next, Jesus gives us an example from Genesis on how unexpectedly this cataclysmic event will unfold. For as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For in those days, before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing until the flood came and swept them all away. As too will be the coming of the Son of Man. You see, before the great flood, people were just going about their lives as usual. They were eating and drinking, their children were getting married, and their parents were giving them in marriage. And what is really interesting here is that Jesus doesn't judge Noah and his family, and he doesn't judge the people that were swept away. They were just doing what we do, eating, drinking, watching Sunday football, playing on their PlayStations in their man caves. Then Jesus continues with another example of how unpredictable his second coming would be. Two will be in the field. One will be taken. One will be left. Two women will be grinding meal together. One will be taken. One will be left. What I find revealing here is that Jesus never specifies whether Christians should desire to be taken or left behind. Biblical scholar N.T. Wright says, it should be noted that being taken in this context means being taken in judgment. There is no hint of a rapture, a sudden supernatural event that would remove individuals from terra firma. It is a matter, rather, of a secret police coming in the middle of the night, or of enemies sweeping through a village or city and seizing all they can. So if N.T. Wright is correct, then we Christians may actually want to be left behind. Next, Jesus issues an imperative. Keep awake. Therefore, for you know not what day your Lord is coming. Professor Lundblad says this imperative is the heart of Jesus' teaching here. Keep alert. Keep awake in the midst of your ordinary day-to-day activities. Then Jesus gives us his third example of what the coming of the Lord could be compared to. But understand this. If the homeowner of the house had known what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Apparently, home invasion was as problematic for the people in Jesus' day as it is in ours. Many homes had upper rooms, and they could only be entered from the outside stairwell. So it was difficult for homeowners to discourage robbers unless they hired a night watchman. In Rome, it was common for wealthy neighborhoods to hire vigilant security guards to watch their homes at night. Today, many of us live in doorman buildings where ready, willing, and able-bodied persons somehow know what we need before we know we need it. And with this, Jesus leaves us with his last image. Therefore, you also must be ready. For the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour. And so, on this first day of the Church New Year, when we wait for Jesus' birthday, we are also reminded to watch for his advent, which literally means coming of the Lord. My second plague happened when I was 28 years old. I was head over heels in love with my new boyfriend, Chuck. And this time, I thought it was for keeps. And Chuck eventually moved into my little cold water studio in the gay ghetto of Detroit. But that Christmas, my sister Martha came home from New York City with an imperative of her own. Martha found a secluded little spot where she could sit Chuck and I down and talk to us in private. Then she told us about a strange new virus. That was attacking gay men in New York. She told us that soon after, the men became very infected. They got very sick. Then she told us there was no cure, and that everyone who became infected eventually died. 3 men whom she had worked with in show business suddenly became infected and died. She said they thought the disease was transmitted sexually. Sometimes the victim's partner came down with the disease, and sometimes he didn't. One was taken, and one was left behind. She told us that the 3 most dreaded words in New York City were, "I have it." Now you have to understand, this was not an easy mission for my sister. It was uncomfortable. Chuck was a total stranger, and I was her little brother. But she did what she had to do. She never accused us. She never judged us. She never lectured us. She just told us to take good care of each other. My sister Martha told us to watch and be ready, because she knew that it wouldn't be long until that virus hit the Motor City. And she did it with love. She warned us. And she knew I hated warnings. And she knew I took them seriously. Today, on this World AIDS Day, we remember all those who never got an early warning or who didn't get the warning in time. And although they died too soon, we remember Jesus' message to all of us from the cross. Tonight, they are with him in paradise. Today, on this World AIDS Day, we support and encourage and empower all our brothers and sisters who are living with HIV and AIDS. And as brothers and sisters in Christ, we continue to ask them the question that Jesus asks us: what do you want me to do for you? And today, on this World AIDS Day, we act up to bring about an end to this dreaded disease. We watch our healthcare system and we watch our government. We watch to make sure they stay awake. And as followers of Jesus, we still have a lot of work to do. We have to educate our brothers and sisters about AIDS. I want to share with you a sobering statistic from Thursday's New York Times. According to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, the number of men who told federal health investigators that they had unprotected sex in the last year rose 20% from 2005 to 2011. The rise in unprotected sex is attributed to 2 factors. The first is the belief that if a person is on the AIDS cocktail, they are unlikely to transmit the disease. This is true if the person takes their cocktail every day, but that is often not the case. The second factor is that with the collapse of the economy, too many young men are out of work. And they tend to have higher risk in their behavior when they have higher risk in their lives. You and I know that the AIDS crisis is far from over. We have a lot of work to do. We must continue the next generation, that they must continue to have safe sex. We needn't accuse them or judge them. or lecture them. We just need to tell them to take good care of each other. And we need to do it in love. So here we are, on this first Sunday of Advent, talking about Jesus' warning to be ready for his second coming, which seems to be hopelessly delayed. I guess it would be easier if it were just the end of the world. If it were just the end of the world, we could all move inland, concentrate on climate control and the melting of the polar ice caps. We could reduce our gas emissions by half, and we could rely on solar and wind energy. But it's not that easy. Stay awake. Jesus is coming. Get ready. That implies that we have to be accountable for our own actions. Jesus wants us to be the best disciples we can be. So where do we begin? What shall we do at being better at waiting for Jesus? Well, we could love our enemies as ourselves, or we could pray the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray, or we could not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will take care of itself, or what if we began by warning others, even when it's uncomfortable and we don't want to? I wonder if there are any Miami Dolphins playing the Jets today who wish they had warned Richie Incognito. I wonder what might have happened if a teammate had warned him that his nonstop harassment of fellow teammate Jonathan Martin had just gone too far. I wonder if the tragic events that occurred at Sandy Hook Elementary School 1 year ago might have played out differently if the warning signs had been heeded. I know that in her fear and in her brokenheartedness, the young man's mother was way too overwhelmed to notice the urgency of her son's warning signs. But I wonder what might have happened if someone, anyone, had intervened. I wonder what might be possible if we stopped saying, "It's none of my business, it's not my place," or "Who would ever listen to me?" But when someone is going down the path to self-destruction, who are we not to warn them? Who are we not to tell them that we love them and that we care about their well-being? Who are we not to remember that silence equals death? We, the beloved community of the Broadway United Church, must also watch and be ready this Advent season. And what we must remember, that we have each other. We must remember to lift up our eyes this Advent season. Let us lift up our eyes with our entire church family. And on this Sunday, this World AIDS Day Sunday, let us not overlook those who cannot lift up their eyes.